Hi, this is Steve Hargadon, and welcome to the Future of Education. It is the 3rd of July, 2012, and our special guest is David Preston, and he's joined by several students, Ian, Trevor, Nicole, Savannah, Josh, Tyler, Trenton, another Ian, and John. Wave hello, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for being here, David. The Future of Education is a Web 2.0 Labs project. Oh, go ahead and say hi.
Hi.
Okay, good. Thanks to Mighty Bell, Blackboard Collaborate, and Instructure for their sponsorship of Web 2.0 Labs projects. It is the 5th anniversary of Classroom 2.0. The first set of chapters from the crowdsourced book are out. I'll be sending out an email probably Thursday. You may have noticed this already or gotten an email if you're an author. We're so excited about this. Thanks so much to Chris, our editor, who's been struggling under the weight of 130 submissions, but they are getting done. If you missed ISTE Unplugged, I just want to give sort of a final wave goodbye to this incredible event. We probably had as many as 300 people there for the all-day unconference on Saturday, which is now called Social EdCon. We had a terrific party on Saturday night. The after party had a brand new Global Education Summit. It was a great success. The Bloggers Cafe, ISTE Live. There are lots of recordings and things up at the website. So that's isteunplugged.com. Those of you who attended virtually or physically, we really loved having you there. Coming up, we are just announcing the Learning 2.0 conference. This is going to be in August as part of Connected Educator Month, probably 4 days in a row. Very exciting. Probably first call for proposals by the end of this week. Go to learning20.com or just sign up for any of the Web 2.0 Labs networks and you'll get notified about that. Connected Educator Month is August. This is a special event being hosted by the Department of Education. Lots of really exciting things that are going to happen there. Library 2.012, October 3rd through the 5th, and the Global Education Conference, the 12th to the 16th. These are all great virtual events. Love to have you join us. In fact, we do have a student track for Learning 2.0, and I expect that some of these fine students will probably submit to present. Coming up on the Future of Education Thursday, Marcia Connor talks about her book on social learning. I can't wait for that. Elliot Washer comes on the 17th to talk about big picture learning. John Idelson on learning and e-portfolios. Lots there. What is new? Tony Wagner's coming on the 28th and on his new book, and that should be really fun. Well, these are all going to be fun. But new on this list, recently Tom Vander Ark is going to come on. Not an uncontroversial figure, but can't wait to talk to him about his book. And Denise Pope from Stanford's coming back. Anyway, lots of good coming up. If you've missed any of the shows, they are all recorded in full Blackboard Collaborate versions and MP3 formats. Do you think I would remember it's Blackboard Collaborate? How long has it been? Okay, so this is the time when you get a chance to let us know where you're listening from. Look for the star to the left of the map. Double click on it, click on the map, and tell us where you are, what the time and temperature, and whether I'm in Park City, Utah, where we're getting ash from a fire relatively close by. Well, it looks like we're North America-centric tonight. Isn't that interesting? I actually would have expected the opposite, given the holiday week. Well, wherever you're participating from, we are sure glad to have you with us. Thanks for joining. If you're listening to the recording, we do appreciate your taking the time to do so. David, I've looked forward to this show for quite some time now. Sorry we had to squeeze you in on an awkward week, and thanks to your students for coming on what must surely be sort of a vacation week.
Much for having us, Steve. And we were kind of joking before we got started that what better occasion to celebrate the idea of independence than with an end-to-end user education.
There you go. Great segue. Okay, so I'm hoping that you can tell us a little bit about your background in the story here, kind of the story of what brought you to this place in this past year.
Well, the story begins a long time ago, actually. I was in the first grade when the story begins. My first grade teacher pulled kids' hair to help them get their math problems right, and I didn't understand that, so I asked her about it. And on my way to the office, when she sent me to the principal for asking about it, I started thinking, how can we do this better? And like a lot of people, I made my compromises in professions and went into management consulting and really didn't have any intention to come back and teach K through 12. I was teaching at UCLA. But a friend of mine invited me to come teach high school English at what was then the fourth largest high school in the country in Los Angeles. And in 2004, after a lot of soul searching and a few conversations with a very forgiving wife, I took the pay cut and went back to teaching high school. My first stint was only going to be 2 years, and I had planned sort of a sabbatical for my practice and for my teaching at UCLA. And it wasn't the stereotypical story where I fell in love with the kids, although what's not to fall in love with. But I really felt like I could make more of a difference outside the classroom until a student walked in. You know, this was an environment in Los Angeles where my room was about halfway between the LAPD substation and the child care facility that was there for not faculty or staff, but for the students' children. And in that environment, you know, I started wondering what was really possible. The students didn't carry books. We had over 5,000 students on this campus on a 3-track year-round calendar. And for a variety of reasons, learning wasn't the priority on campus. It was the usual, management and order and trying to preserve safety. So in that environment, imagine my surprise when a kid walked in not just with a book, but The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama. And it turned out that he was an exchange student from Mongolia who not only learned English and passed high school and graduated within a year and a half and went on to college, but also invited me home for dinner. And so I spent a month with Zolzai and his family in Tibet and Mongolia and Western China. And when I came back, I decided that this was going to take a little bit longer than I thought, and I rededicated myself to learning. So I gave my consultants the books of business and moved to California's Central Coast because I also wanted, having had the urban experience, I wanted to see what was going on in California's version of the Heartland. And one of the things that you and I have talked about in education, the mob has a concept of omerta, the code of silence, and yet every single time I open a newspaper or turn on the TV, I can see mob news, and it seems really like the only people who don't have a seat at the education policy table are the eyewitnesses. And so for many people, what happens behind the chain link fence on the days they don't give tours is quite a mystery. And it certainly was to me. So I originally thought of this as kind of reconnaissance. I wanted to come and report to the world on what was happening and what the opportunities were. And as I got more and more involved myself, I realized that the tools that we have now, you know, I'm not a digital native. I'm not even really a digital tourist. My own computer education ended on a TRS-80 in 1979, 1980. I'm sort of a digital outpatient. I use this stuff when I see an opportunity or see a problem that I can use to solve it. And as I started, I think, like many educators, I looked at ways of saving paper or making the existing curriculum more interesting. But something really powerful happened. It hews much more to network theory than it does to education theory. The more I use these tools and the more students use them for their own goals and their own ends, the network changed. It changed in composition. It changed in purpose. And so in May of last year, I really felt like I was onto something, but I didn't know what the something was. And so I entered an idea called the Open Source School to the Institute for the Future's California Dreams Contest. And they liked the idea and brought me to Palo Alto to give a talk. And in that environment, I met a lot of folks, including Howard Rheingold and people who were working in current Silicon Valley companies, who let me know that I was actually not working in isolation, but joining a community, and certainly you're a big part of that community, and I'm really grateful for what you and Audrey and so many of the others do who create this awareness around technology and education. So that's sort of the brief version. This past year was really kind of the proof of concept year, but that's kind of a synopsis of how I came to be back in the classroom.
Thank you for that. We're going to get to the students. Please don't worry, we're going to give them plenty of time, but I wanted to drill down just a bit with David on this. I'm interested in the degree to which you think this is a new story, an old story, or the combination of new and old stories. Certainly, say over the last 10 years, we've had some really great examples of people sort of doing networked learning and open source learning and constructivism and connectivism. But it also feels as though some of these pedagogical principles are actually sort of as old as humankind. So where do you sort of feel like the two blend right now?
I feel like we really need to make a dent in the discourse. I think that there's way too much attention given to the tools that we use as opposed to what we're using those tools to build. The process of thought and communication and collaboration and community development is ancient. It's timeless. It's a fundamental human need. It's a fundamental human impulse. We're a sense-making animal. Before we're born, we have the hardware and the software that we use to start thinking and learning about ourselves and our place in the world. And a big part of this is taking the institution out as a barrier. To me, it's compelling that, for example, Apple has more money and arguably traditionally at least more creativity than the public sector, and yet Apple in the world is think different. Apple in school is e-textbooks. We have an institution that's built for defensive strength, which is certainly an advantage, and I'm not taking on school. I don't want that to be misunderstood. But that defensive strength makes the institution very difficult to change. And when we're talking about a very complex and uncertain future we're all facing, innovation, critical thinking, the values that we know to be important in our thought processes aren't really provided for in the curriculum itself. The debate about the achievement gap doesn't really compel me because even the finest curriculum is still subject by subject, and that's not the way our minds work, and it's not the way the world works. So I wanted to create something, or at least present an environment in which learners could create a process that maps to how we think. You know, that messy chaos between our ears when we end this call and I think of all the things I should have said, that's learning. And we don't really provide or document that. The circumstantial evidence that we've got now in terms of testing and standardized curriculum don't give us any insight. So the long way around to answer your question, the technology is new. Everything else is ancient.
So let's drill down one more question on this, because I think it's a good intro to an idea that's pertinent or relevant to what you're doing. What's the model for change here? I mean, certainly there have been great teachers who've created great opportunities for students that 5 years later nobody knows about. How do you see what you've been doing with your students as potentially leading to a larger change? What's the path that would get there?
Well, the larger change in my mind is to look at the entire economic sector that surrounds learning. Currently, we have a model where any economic incentive that's provided within an institution pales in comparison to the industries that surround the institution and sometimes even the failure of the institution. So whether it's textbooks or testing, there's a lot of market share out there, but it's concentrated. I see that the opportunity, and then on the other side, we have over $1 trillion now in student loan debt. And I think that the bigger opportunity here is that, you know, these students are here on the day before the 4th of July. No one's compelling them to be here. We're in my house. Next year's students are already on their course blog, and it's at about 1,300 page views. Last year's it is about 90,000. If we can continue this sort of communal expansion in thinking, and we can introduce some 3.0 tools, I think we're going to see a future in which every path of inquiry contributes to the body of what we know. In other words, by tagging things and making things searchable, by creating an online environment where people can create and curate knowledge capital that's directly transferable to the marketplace. If you and I in 5 years apply for a job, I fully expect that if I have my PhD and my CV ready to go, but you, on the other hand, have a progressively masterful record of formative evaluation and an authenticated record of portfolio work that you can show, who's the more competitive candidate? And in Silicon Valley, some companies won't look at a software developer without a portfolio already now. So I think the long term here that's maybe different than what we've seen before is that the application of these tools and the way that learners transparently use these tools can self-perpetuate. This is like Cory Doctorow's the sheep that, how to put this gently on your broadcast, the sheep that poop grass. Because in the process of our learning and our understanding, we're generating records that other people can use. In South Korea, which has an open market for teaching, at least in terms of test prep, I think the Queen of English, Rose Lee, at last count, was making something like $7 million a year. Well, here in America, we don't have an open education market. We have a market when if a teacher shares a curriculum piece and gets pennies on the dollar for it through a website, there's criticism about private sector versus, the noble cause of teaching. And I think changing the conversation, not through theory and not through a promise of what's to come, but through actual showing results. I talked to one executive in Silicon Valley who told me, he's in his 60s, who said there are lots of people out there with brilliant ideas. And to make sure I say this out loud, we're not special. We're doing things that a lot of people are out there trying to do and wanting to do, and we're contributing from our perspective what we can. But there's so much conversation about what could be. Older generations weren't raised on praise, he told me. They were raised on results. So if you didn't do the job, you didn't get a cookie or get told, hey, thanks for trying. And what people are seeing now are students who have blogs, who have digital identities, who have essentially created value that they can now translate to the marketplace. And I think if there's anything that distinguishes this approach, it's that. It's that the community takes on a life of its own, and through a concept of adding value, they actually become innovators and entrepreneurs if they want to.
I'm going to save the rest of that conversation if we have time at the end. I think it's going to be a challenge. And I look at big picture schools, or I look at other organizations that have, even gotten to tens of schools, and then find that they're just not a part of the larger dialogue. I'm really intrigued by, what would need to happen for there to be a shift, and we can drill down on that as we get to the end. Okay, so let's actually talk about what you did this year and get some students up here. And so what I can do is I can take us on a web tour for each topic. We've got 4 projects. The first is Project Infinity and Commons Consulting. That's Ian and Trevor. So if we could get them to come forward, tell me, David, what website you want me to go to give them a chance to talk about this.
Everything's in alpha. They can explain the ideas behind this themselves, but you can see it on PrestonLearning.com on the Ventures page, the Learning Ventures page. And there you'll find a brief synopsis, and when they have a site up and running, then we'll put up links through that.
Okay, guys, so introduce yourselves and give us an idea of what this means. Project Infinity and Commons Consulting.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
So just introduce yourselves and then tell us what these terms mean, Project Infinity and Commons Consulting.
Well, I'm Ian. I'm Trevor. That's true. Project Infinity started as a way to kind of gamify the way our class assessed what people were doing in the class. And it started off as an idea we had at the very beginning of the year. And we wanted to add a point system and add banners and labels and all these graphic gifts to give to people when they were completing certain tasks. And that idea kind of fell short, and we didn't have enough time to do it, and it was something we had to do outside of class that school got in the way of. And then towards the end of the year after the AP testing, and once everything was sort of settled and there wasn't much core curriculum left, we brought Project Infinity back up, and it became this huge way to assess productivity in the class and a way to make it fun and not leave people in the dark if they felt they were too far behind in the game or something like that.
The platform WordPress, I think it is, isn't it?
Yes, WordPress.
And I noticed there's a version 1 and a version 2, right?
Yeah, version 1 was actually for our senior class, and that one only went for a month because there was only a month left in school. Project Infinity 2 is going to be for the graduating class of 2013, and it's starting the summer before their year. So we have this whole year to do Project Infinity 2.
So I'm wondering if you want to move on to Commons Consulting, or did the two of you do separate projects, or were you both involved in each one?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
That's okay. Wait, so you're Ian, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Ian, there's a question in the chat. How do boys and girls respond differently to using technology for learning in your classes? You were into gamifying. Were some of the girls as well, or was there actually kind of a separation?
That's actually a really interesting question, and I would have been on the same page as whoever asked the question in the chat, and I would have expected more of the guys to be involved in the game. And I mean, I made it because I like video games, and that's something that is interesting, but also has its backbone reward system, so it would make sense to do in the classroom. And as soon as, and I guess calling it gamification sounds weird because it's not turning it into a game so much as it is all the aspects of a game taken out of context. And the boys definitely got into it, but the girls were the ones that took it to a whole new level. A lot of them would, right off the bat, they started making their own working groups with each other. One of our friends, Kira, when we started the whole gamification idea, she went off on her own and completed almost all of the tasks by herself. And then when it came to Project Infinity, she kept completing all the tasks and getting points and completely dominating. And in fact, even she who completed all the tasks created her own kind of game out of it, because in essence we wanted it to be based on peer-to-peer learning and connection and assessment. And she went to recruit juniors below the class below us and made her own game out of it to add to her game environment, I guess it would be.
Okay, thanks, Ian. So, Trevor, were you involved in the Commons Consulting?
Do you want to talk about that? So basically, the Commons Consulting is just for us to kind of teach other people about what we did for this class, because so many people have questions about it. And so one of the things we talk about is like internet security, because especially in school, everyone's concerned for safety, as Dr. Preston said. So we kind of teach people how to be safe online and try to like demystify some things, because there's a lot of people who understand its importance but don't necessarily swim in it, so they kind of don't know what the water's like in reality. So we're kind of just going around and teaching to make people understand better, so that there's more acceptance around what we're doing. Because a lot of people are kind of scared sometimes. And the internet privacy security is kind of like cyberbullying. There's security passwords information. it's not just like internet viruses or anything. It's just how to keep your personal information safe online, so that nothing really bad happens. And we also kind of talk about how to use certain tools online for learning. Like our class used the blog, and we did it for English. And so a lot of people come up with questions like, well, how to use it for math or how to use it for science. And so there's many ways you can use the same tools, but for those other subjects. So really, essentially, the model could be used for any subject, things like that.
Yeah.
So we just kind of talk to people about
and,
it.
and because it can be used for anything, we realized that teaching the basic things that you would run into was important. So that's kind of what we're planning on doing. Are doing. We're going in and teaching online security, internet privacy, safety on social networking. Or social networks, sorry, and just how generally you should act online, because it's not much different than how you should act in the real world. It's just people don't understand that it's like that.
So, Dr. Preston, is there somebody in the room who's not leading one of these descriptions who could come forward and tell us a little bit about who they're teaching? Is there someone else involved in the teaching?
I'm sorry, Steve, is there somebody else involved in the venture?
Is there somebody else involved in this teaching that you're doing who's not going to be presenting one of these projects that I could talk to? You could have them come forward and I could talk to you for a minute.
Well, they've all been involved from the consumer side. Nicole, why don't you come on up?
I just wanted to give someone else a chance. Here we go. Who's this?
Hi, I'm Nicole Montoya.
Hi, Nicole. Okay, so tell me first, so you got to turn your mic off when I'm talking. So can you just click that talk button there? Perfect. So how did these ideas of teaching come up in the class? Did Dr. Preston bring them up? Did you bring them up? Where did the ideas come from?
Well, first, Dr. Preston kind of just started talking about it, gave ideas, but mostly he just did the basics, and people in the classroom just started coming up with their own ideas and worked off of it and became more detailed in the thing. And then basically with Preston and all the people in the class together, we made basically the learning together.
Okay, and does the word commons here indicate a learning commons? Is that why you're using the word commons, or is there another reason for using that word?
Could you repeat that, please?
So the word here is commons consulting. So the word commons. Why was that word used, and was it because of the idea of a learning commons?
Well,
Sorry. The reason commons was chosen was, well, there are multiple different reasons because of the multiplicity of the word common. Common implies that it's something that everyone can get a grasp or a handle of. It also has the connotation of commons or housing, where people are together and connected under the same kind of banner, I guess it would be, where everyone is on the same level and doing the same thing and learning the same thing. And it was really a word that stuck immediately because of what it could be used for.
I think you guys are really going to enjoy looking up the work of a man named David Lurcher, who uses this in the context of a learning commons. And Dr. Preston will probably jump all over that. He probably knows about it. Okay, one more question for Nicole. So Nicole, who are you teaching? When you say you're going out and teaching, are you teaching students, other teachers? Where are you going?
me? Like what I'm doing in the future?
No, because what Ian and Trevor said was that the students are going out and teaching these concepts. So who's being taught?
Well, it depends on what you're doing. Like some people, they're teaching like the younger people, like that are becoming seniors now. Mostly that's what we're doing for like Project Infinities for the people that are going to come in to Dr. Preston's future class. So that's who we're teaching, and parents also. So
awesome.
It's not just, yeah, so we have the adult side and the younger side together, so they both know what's going on in learning experience. And
Thanks, Nicole. Hey, would you have Tyler come up? We're going to talk now about change against the machine.
I'm Tyler. And yeah.
Hi, Tyler. Okay, so tell us, what is change against the machine?
Well, like the idea came about because I am into like causes and movements and such, like helping, the world and stuff. I don't know, but I've like through my experience of going online and trying to get involved in this stuff, it's really just not a very simple process. Like there's not just like one place where I can go to like get involved or get unbiased information about various causes. And so like the idea came to me to make a community made by people our age for people our age, because that's not really what's out there. It's usually just like older people trying to appeal to people our age, and it just doesn't really work. I wanted to make like a one-stop like database of every cause and movement out there, from the smallest thing that affects like maybe your county to like worldwide, like stop hunger movements and everything. And like I wanted to make it a place where people can go and just get unbiased information about it, and they can dig into it as like deep as they want to, or they can just go on there and read about it, or they can eventually like meet up with people that are running these movements and volunteer, and just make it like a one-stop place for it. And I wanted to make it musically entwined as well, because it doesn't matter like the differences between people in the world. Everybody listens to music of some sort, and I think that would be a great way for it to spread out.
So is this a project you started, a project you would like to start? What stage is it at?
Currently, it is not really left the discussion area yet. Like, I know what I want to do, I've just not made the steps towards it yet, but it's happening, and it's going to take off soon.
So one of the question in the chat was, is the expectation for the juniors to continue the projects the seniors have started? So of the projects that you as a class have been working on this year, how many of them continue on, and how many do you kind of take off with you to do on your own?
Well, this one personally, I am taking off with on my own. I don't see much that the junior class, so just now seniors, can do with it except for help spread it. But yeah, it's not really learning based with that.
Okay, awesome, Tyler. Thank you so much. Okay, would you have Josh come up? So Josh, this is a movie called We Are Superman. I'm actually going to show it, if we can, here in this environment. But before we do so, kind of cue it up for us. Where did the idea come from? What kind of work were you involved in? How many people helped you? What was the process?
Well, it sort of started with the students. Some of them wanted to be filmmakers, and so it sort of turned into what better way of going down that path than to just start making a movie. And the subject was pretty obvious, being that they were involved in this education system. So it was really a project by the students. My involvement really hasn't started yet. As I'm getting involved, basically going to make it, try to take it full scale, where it was more of a project that they started. Working with them, we're going to grow it out into something much bigger.
Okay, I'm going to put it up on the screen now. If you need to hit play, everybody, just go ahead and hit play, but it should come up. And it looks like it's 4.5 minutes. Should we watch the whole thing, Josh? If we watched half of it, would people get an idea of what's going on, or we need to watch the whole thing?
Well, obviously we'd like people to see the whole thing, but if you want to queue it up and maybe once you get an idea of it, get a good sense of what it is, you can feel free to stop it whenever you think is appropriate.
Okay, we'll watch the whole thing. Okay, everybody, hit play. You have to hit play on your own machine for the video to go, and we'll come back in 4.5 minutes. I don't want to give up time for questions, so I'm skipping the credits. If you missed that, I am going to put the link in the chat, and you can watch it again at your own time. It's also in my blog post. Okay, so Josh, where do you want to take the film? What is it you want to do with it?
Well, we want to go as far as we can. I mean, we want to go everywhere. After watching Waiting for Superman, it's sort of you're left with this sort of depressing feeling like there was no solution given. The idea of waiting for something just doesn't seem like it's appropriate with the current state of the way things are. So we propose, rather than wait for somebody to come along and save you, why not just do it yourself? So rather than wait for Superman, that's the title of the film, We Are Superman. There's no waiting necessary. So we're going to make this film. We're going to take it as far as we can, and we're going to propose a real solution for a real problem, and hopefully meet a lot of interesting people along the way.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Josh. Dr. Preston, David, who else isn't going to get a chance to present one of the projects? So I have another question on this I want to ask. So who else can you bring up who's not going to be a main presenter?
I can bring up Trenton is doing a project on e-publishing. And let's see, who else? Savannah Lyon is also here. She's got multiple careers and nothing specific venture-wise with us, but she was in the classes last year.
Bring Savannah up. And besides Savannah and Trenton, is there anybody else we need to talk to?
Savannah's here, and besides her and Trenton, I think you talked to everybody today.
Okay, awesome. Okay, put Savannah on. Okay, Savannah said a talk, you click that talk button. I was really interested in the video in the question that one girl in the class asked about, did you ever have doubts? So can you describe for me, has there been a process of personal growth for you in doing this? Were there things that you weren't sure you could do, and other things that you did that you're particularly proud of? Got to turn your mic on. Click on that talk button.
Not touching. No, using your phone. I've spent years blogging, so I know like the online community, but it's been different doing it as like a school project, I guess. So like you have to learn how to do it, like put your own interests as well as what you need to learn to grow in education and what you do. I started looking up stuff and like adding to the books that we read graphically, and I think I got better at that as I went by and stuff. And it was pretty hard to always be on and to know like what you're doing and to spend so much time reaching out to different communities and trying to see like what you can do, how you can help, what's there to learn.
If you talk to somebody, you're going to have to turn the mic off so we don't get an echo. So if you talk to somebody who wasn't in the class or from another school, do you tell them that this was a really big deal for you? I mean, how does it, or was it just another class? How do you describe what took place? How much do you think it's going to impact your life?
I mean, I don't remember this class for the rest of my life. So obviously it had a pretty big impact. It's different from any other class that I've ever taken, and I'm sure it's different from any other class that anybody else has ever taken, especially in the high school level. Usually it's textbook, it's PowerPoints, it's dry.
but this one like wasn't invigorated with such different qualities. It's just amazing. And what Dr. Preston taught us and what we learned ourselves, it's so much more than high school. It's past that, it's beyond that. It's pretty much like, it's your life. It's your online life.
Awesome answer. Okay, can we get Trenton to come up?
Trenton's going to come up, but I actually forgot someone, and I'm sorry for that. John, this is John Cusera, who's being shy behind me, but don't believe him, he's coy. Here he is.
Hi, John. Come on up. What did you do this year that you're never going to forget? Got to turn that mic on.
It's not so much what I did this year. I think that's why I'm here, is that I want to continue it well beyond this past high school year. But what I'm developing is this challenge to our method of research of the MLA research paper. And while that's all well and good, and it does a lot of help for college professors that want to run through a bunch of essays, or English teachers that want to read a bunch of essays to just get through them, it doesn't really envelop the person doing the work in what they're researching. And it's really stuffy, and it's really hard for other people to make use of it. So really it's only of use to the person doing the research and the person that's reading it, like the professor. And I want all that information to not go to waste, and I want to develop this way for it to be shared. So really what I've been doing with myself and one other student, a foreign student, is that we're exploring all these different ways to turn a research project into anything besides this stuffy 20-page MLA paper that can be easily digested by other people to suit their needs.
So would it be fair to say turning a research project into an action project?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've taken a lot of inspiration from TED Talks, but I don't want to limit myself to that format. So any type of presentation or anything dynamic, or more so dynamic than a standard paragraph after paragraph paper, would really be helpful to building a community of intellectualism that I feel is lost on the younger people.
Okay, you should turn your mic off now while I'm talking, because we get this bizarre kind of echo. I apologize for that. Perfect. Okay, so before you go, it's John, right? Nod your head if it's John. I think it's John, right? Okay, so John, Dr. Preston at some point used the phrase that school is an irrelevant exercise in obedience. When does it help to have structure in school and things you have to learn, and when does it help to be self-motivated and self-engaging? Is it always best to be working kind of independently, or do you appreciate certain kinds of structure around your learning?
It would be unfair to say that either one of those is entirely unnecessary or necessary. I think you definitely need both, because I'm sorry to say that I feel like I kind of checked out of the school system at a very young age. Before I met people like Dr. Preston and other teachers that could have really helped me, I just didn't feel into it, and I felt smart and I felt capable, but I didn't feel motivated. So self-motivation is always something that you need, so that you don't rely on the structure, but a good structure should include something that teaches you how to self-motivate. So I think they're both very necessary, and there's no way to quantify the importance of either.
Yeah. Very thoughtful answer. Okay, hey, would you have Trenton come up? Okay, Trenton, tell us about the e-publishing project.
Can you hear me? Okay. The e-publishing idea came from, well, I was just kind of looking around, really with a lot of other people reading, and really it was on like the national bestseller list, and I was just thinking, I don't want to read it, any of that. And I'm like, I write stories myself, and I know a lot of other people, like-minded, who also like to write stories. And I was thinking, I'd almost most of the time rather read one of theirs. And so the idea came around to create a site that would make like a community from story sharing, like a place where authors can get onto a site and they can easily put up like stories they've written, and where anyone in the going on the site can see them. And that's kind of like my vision I have right now.
Something you're going to work on this coming year, or something? Are you a junior or a senior?
I'm actually, well, yeah, I was part of the graduating class of 2012, and it's something that I wanted to get started on this summer, so I could take it with me when I go to college, and like I can share it with everyone there.
One of the questions in the chat, Trenton, was how long was your class with Dr. Preston? Was it every day for a certain amount of time, a couple times a week? What was the actual class structure like?
The length of the class was similar to a normal class, where it would be once, like, an hour a day, Monday through Friday. I mean, that was the confines we had to work with.
I'm assuming that then in that hour it was very different than in the other classes you were taking.
Well, yeah, it was pretty much an hour that was completely different than the rest of your day. I mean, what we were doing in his class was completely different. It's like we go in here, and while the entire rest of the school day is kind of traditional, wherein like there's schooling, and then there's the real world, and there's this type of veil between it. And meanwhile, what we're doing in this class was like piercing through the veil and trying to make it so what we learn in here is kind of applicable to really anything we want to do in the real world.
Sure. Okay, so I want to get, thank you for that so much, Trenton. Let's get Dr. Preston back, and I'm going to ask him a few questions, and we've got some questions from the audience as well. And then I want to make sure that we did get everybody there, David.
We did.
So one of the participants wanted to know more about the International Digital Research Partnership. Is that something you can put in the chat, or a link, or a quick answer? We don't need to go into it because of time, but if there's a way for them to find out about that would be great. My question for you is, how did you feel about balancing structure and freedom, and did your ideas about how you ran the class change over the course of the year?
I'll answer the second part first. My feelings absolutely changed over the course of the year, and because of the way this room is set up, and we wanted to get people in front of the computer, I wasn't able to follow the chat through the whole time, so it looks like there was some great discussion on there, and if people asked a question or made a comment that I couldn't answer, please do send me an email, because I would love to answer and engage. The way that I felt different, to answer the second part first, at the beginning, as much as I said things in class to the contrary, I was still a teacher in a school, in a room, trying to get students to think their way out of that environment. But it was still essentially a one-to-many broadcast in the beginning. There were a lot of students who were, I think, maybe a bit excited about the possibilities, but also waiting for the other shoe to drop. If things didn't go well, or if they did something that, that was out of the box, I think that they were waiting to be told, no, after all, that was a mirage, and this is really the way it has to work. And so the rate of adoption was all over the map. The early adopters in the fall, Ian and Trevor among them, started remixing the curriculum and creating their own solutions to problems, like how do you assess something that's never really been done early on. Winter break killed off a good part of the momentum, but what happened was it was almost like paring back a plant for the season. The students that got it came back from winter break, and for the second half of the year, I really felt like one node in a 96-member network. I was no longer driving the process. And to the question about structure, you know, I love jazz, and part of the reason I love jazz is because I can't play. In fact, Trevor, by the way, is a musical savant as well as his other talents. He's taken pity on me, and he's trying to teach me how to play the guitar. But the reason I bring that up is because you start with arpeggios and scales and structure and chords, and then you move on to being able to riff. And that was the same process I saw with this group of learners, where we started with a very simple structure, which essentially was my telling them, this is new technology, it's poorly understood by a lot of people out there who are in policy-making decisions, or policy-making capacities, and if something goes wrong, we got to turn it off. I hope that doesn't happen. And that was the entirety of my acceptable use policy and rulemaking. I think there was a part of the question that I missed. Oh, the international research. If Buffy's still here, I want to give her a shout out, because when we first started collaborating, Buffy and I were working together on other projects, and then she gave a talk on the DML Hub, and during that process, she was impressed with our students and said, gee, I wish I could work with you guys, and I sent her an email and said, why not? And that's sort of been the theme throughout. If people see an opportunity and want to play, and the play has anything to do with learning, I throw open the doors. So in our school, no other specialist has taken a collaborative part to answer the chat here. But what I have seen is teachers from all over the country and all over the world. A librarian from Scotland is taking an interest. Ben Choon, a wonderful teacher at Galileo High School in San Francisco, did some Skype calls with Ian and Trevor when they were building a video game, which we didn't even get to in this conversation. And so really, to tie those themes together, the beginning structure and the beginning building off of the traditional roles really wound up sort of a jazz riff. And next year's class is going to become their own network, and they'll add to the overall community of what's possible, but they're already doing things differently. And part of what's embraceable here is the sheer impermanence, because that does map to the way we think and the way that we learn.
So we have limited time. There have been a couple of questions in the chat. I'll try and drill through them fast, but I have one question for myself. Oftentimes a teacher doing this kind of progressive activity will find that they don't have a job after a period of time. How have other members of the faculty and staff at the school responded, especially in a situation where the teacher is clearly the lead learner, learning as well and sort of modeling the learning? Has this been threatening, or have you been embraced? How have other teachers responded? You don't have a mic there.
Did I turn the mic off? Steve, I think it's harder to diplomatically answer that question in a public forum without rubbing people the wrong way than it is to actually do my job. Teachers are very siloed, as you know, and I think some of the last people to learn what we were doing were in the rooms right next door. I'm not out to persuade other teachers. I would love to pull people along with us, but this is the traditional early adopter, connector, hockey stick approach. The people that don't get this, the people that teach in different ways or don't do what I call teaching, are not the people that I want to spend time persuading right now. The people that I want to spend time working with and collaborating with are the people who get it. Now, I can honestly report, fortunately, I'm not only not losing my job, but I got an award from the school for innovation. I think there are about 3 or 4 people who know what I'm doing. One of them, fortunately, is the superintendent of curriculum and instruction. He, along with 3 other superintendents of curriculum and instruction, are going to be joining me for a walkthrough next Tuesday so that I can share the model in a little bit more detail. And part of what I'm very self-conscious about right now is that I've been so involved in the doing of all of this. I like the way you put it, chief learner, I like that, that the documentation has lagged far behind. I just had a meeting this morning with Brian Alexander, who was recently on your show, to talk about the analytics and how we might drive a research agenda through all of the data that's spinning off of this. And that's not something that I want to do personally. I want to keep doing what I'm doing. But I think it's an important conversation to have, and I am excited that other people are getting involved.
Okay, David, thank you so much. We, as a courtesy to everybody, we do end on time. Thanks to you, thanks to Ian, Trevor, Nicole, Savannah, Josh, Tyler, Clinton, the other Ian, and John. Really appreciate your coming on. I'm going to put the link in the chat again to the Mighty Bell site, because if there was a question that you had that didn't get answered, you can go in there and post it there. I tried to post all of the resources for the show there as well. Thank you, David. Really enjoyed it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Steve.
We are applauding for you. Have a great night. Thanks for taking the time. Okay, very loud clapping. Radney says he'll be showing the trailer in class tomorrow. Don't miss our upcoming shows. Marcia Connor on social learning. This is really going to be fun. That's Thursday night again. We know it's a hard week for people. And then a week break, but Elliot Washer kicks off on the 17th, which should be great. And don't forget, look for announcements for both the Learning 2.0 Virtual Conference and Connected Educators Month. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Take care, and bye now.